When we gave the explanation about the economic crisis happened in the 1968, 67, we have gave the data to show that physical investments from the government side decreased, and then there will be no ability to make new room for these young people in city to have a job. So we have a large number of the jobless youth sent to the countryside. That means the crisis very much harm the city, the citizens. And a lot of families just separated. And the family parted and then to different provinces, into different village. So I just mentioned, just gave the case as myself. My family, 6 members sent to the 6th place. And so that time, a lot of family stand on such kind of big economic crisis cost. Means that the people pay large number of the human force for solving the problem of zero capital investments to maintain the industrialization. Also, people need to stand for the crisis, for solving the crisis. The crisis make the out of job, make the unemployment, and then people need also tolerate such kind of bad events. And then when people followed the policy to go into the countryside, and then the crisis in city soft-landed. So I mean, when we talk about the third crisis in China, it's similar as the second crisis. The crisis soft-landing by people, not by whatever we familiar with this modern concept. Also the soft landing by rural, by agricultural society, not by city, not by any so-called modern measures, not by the so-called clever policy and so and so. So that is a mouse time. The second time solve the problem of the crisis. But we also need to know most of these crises somehow as a kind of the problems that from the economic problem transforming into the political issue and then to be the political problems. In any country, no matter you claim what isms, capitalism or socialism, when you're facing the challenge of the economic crisis, these are economic problems always transform into the political problems. And if you do your research in different countries, you can find there's a similar phenomena. That means that's one is a kind of rule, it's a kind of regulation. So I said that it's a general rule. Economic crisis transforming into the political crisis. Here, you can see that it's 1967. In Shanghai, it's a mega city. This is a cultural revolution, joined by the working class, by the citizens, and also the People's Army here. And they set up a new form of the government management. That is a Shanghai People's Commune. And there's a Shanghai People's Commune. That is a big ceremony for setting up Shanghai People's Commune. Means that they are trying to totally change the bureaucratic government structure. That is a political reform. Caused by the economic crisis, almost all of this traditional management originally duplicated from Soviet Union and then set up in China as a kind of political superstructure, could hardly facing the challenge of the economic crisis. by the government any measures? No way. So this time, when you are facing the challenge of economic crisis, you found the governments have almost no function to deal with the crisis. So the Cultural Revolution, a lot of people cannot understand the Cultural Revolution first. The theoretically thinking, that is under the totalitarian governance, the revolution need to keep going. That is from Leninism. But how to implement in China? At that time, China announced that it's a socialist China. Socialism, and then you indicate you have a class struggle. Where is the capitalist class? So landlord class has been down, and then you are a socialist system. These cadres is a capitalist class. These bureaucrats, they are capitalist class, and people suspicious a lot. But if you take what I gave you as an explanation just now, you may understand. When China re-emphasized the class struggle, the whole world is uneven. The social chaos everywhere. And then the imperialist country directly used the military force to press developing countries' struggle, the left-wing struggle. And so there's many bad things happen in the world. So at that time, China re-emphasized the class struggle and then joined the worldwide revolution. That is a very common, very popular phenomena that you can, if you were in that time, in 1960s, you can be easier to understand. China emphasized the class struggle. And otherwise, China used this slogan, this so-called political propaganda, to mobilize the low class, to mobilize the whole people as a labor, to concentrate, invest into the constructions. That is why China maintained its industrialization. That is the 1960s. And also I mentioned that Chinese political leader has reformed the army. The army is the critical department, critical sector of the whole of political superstructure. So means that army has been changed, reformed. And then also they changed the rural people's commune. They changed the factories. It means the whole of the economic infrastructure also changed. Now they are trying to change the critical part, that is the government, and also the cultural part and the educational part. It's educational system, cultural system, and the government system. These are three systems still remain in so-called traditional or Soviet Union styles, not re-embedded to the Chinese-style societies. So Chinese-style socialism. So that is a contradiction. So that is also why there is a so-called furthermore revolution in the name of cultural revolution. Because this time it's initiated in the cultural sectors and educational sectors. So the cultural system, education system, and I suppose that this cultural revolution finally will be totally change the government system. So the government's ruling system, yes? So when they finish almost all of the infrastructure constructions, infrastructure reform, economically, means that change the whole of the base. Now they are going to upgrade to change the management system. That is at that time. So from 1960s, and in 1966, when they start the Cultural Revolution, certainly there is a very serious contradiction. Also because of that time, when the universities and the governments have a big trouble of the Cultural Revolution, and the management, the ability of the management downgrade. It's not applied to the crisis. Because the crisis just 1 year after means that 1966, the Cultural Revolution started. In 1967, the fiscal deficit became more serious. So you have to deal with these two problems. One is a Cultural Revolution, means the government's management decreased. The ability of the government management decreased. Another side, you need to deal with the crisis economically. So that is a contradiction. So since that's what means that the leader, especially Chairman Mao, the Mao himself, they need to very urgent to find a way to do the management. So that is why he approved the Shanghai People's Commune. That is also 三结合, means working class and cadres and intellectuals. These three parts mixed together as a group, as a leading group. This three part mixed as a group to be the leadership. It's a successful model in not only in agriculture but also in factories, in the industries. So this time they are trying to rebuild up the regulation, rebuild up the rule. So it means that by such kind of three-part mixed group. That's because I gave the several important key points here. That is, in 1963, the government, bureaucratic system, raised up the third five-year plan, want to gain the full modernization. It's a similar model of Soviet Union. I just give you a second. Think about this, the third five-year plan. They made in 1963. But 1963, if you want to build up the modernization, you need to have more capital. Means regain the relation with Soviet Union. Until now, there still be a lot of arguments. Should China delinking with Soviet Union in late 1950s? If you're not, you can have a capital keep invest into China, and then you will have no big disaster. And then you set up a line with Soviet Union, and then the whole of the world will still be in two parts, and the socialist ally still be there. And so many arguments, so many imagination. They imagine that if you keep such kind of relation, what will happen? But there will be no hypothesis in the historical studies. The practice means that you have then delinking. But it also means that a lot of cadres, they educated from Soviet Union. Similar as nowadays, you have so many high-level cadres educated from United States. At least from Soviet Union trained cadres come back to be the ministers or even the vice premiers, whatever. They learned the model, and they will use this model. They learned the regulation, they will use this regulation to manage the Chinese economy. So even in the beginning of 1960s, you have a very clear to know you have no capital. But the five-year plan still be there. Want to keep going of 1950s Soviet Union styles construction. That is a kind of contradiction between three-front constructions investments and the third five-year plan construction. The third five-year plan, very clear to give you a picture, we are trying to realize full modernization. Any modernization need large capital investments, but you have no capital. So it means that exactly, no matter whatever you believe, you cannot implement the third five-year plan. And then when 1964, the Central Party Committee changed from the third five-year plan into the third front construction. Means large, even you have just a little investments, you need to invest into the preparation of the World War, of the imperialist country attack you. So that is that time, the contradiction. And this contradiction turned to the 1966, that is Cultural Revolution. I stop second, give you room for thinking about this one. And I don't want to give you a detailed explanation, but anyway, I just roughly to talk. The Cultural Revolution stopped or postponed, or anyway, it's exactly stopped by economic crisis. Because here, when the 1966, China announced no any foreign debts, means that China has to pay back all the capital investments from Soviet Union. But payback debts and the three-front construction all make the budget burden become more and more heavy, the deficit more and more serious. So I just mentioned, gave you the pictures to show that the investment's ability downgrade to minus 30%, means that no any ability. And so that is why they have a mobilization to make the jobless urban youth go into countryside. But this one is a very important factor. Who is the main force of Cultural Revolution? Young people. When young people mobilized to go into countryside, you have no people join the Cultural Revolution. So since 1968 to 1969, more than 17 million educated youth, I mean the school young people sent to the countryside. There's almost no people join the Cultural Revolution. Because Cultural Revolution started from the educational system, cultural system, and then you send these people to the countryside. Nobody can be the main force to keep the Cultural Revolution going on. So that is, I need to mention that. Here is in Tianjin. These are young people in the trains, and their family and the classmates come to say goodbye. So that is Tianjin, means that many thousands of people going to the countryside. And here is in northeast China. They live very difficult. There's these shelters, but they work very hard. And anyway, in northeast China, they dress as a uniform, means that they can have a little bit salary. That is a so-called state farm or military farm. And sub-military organizations means they still have a little salary. But most of people, if they go to the countryside in the brigade, in the village, they will have no any salary. They only can have the labor credit. So I was that time in the village. I only have a labor credit. So the end of the year, according to how many labor credit I created, I can have a food and a little bit cash. So that is a different treatment. So that time, the urban youth would like to go to the state farm. And so state farm maintained a lot of educated youth. So that is in the countryside. That means that by such kind of measures, the Cultural Revolution stopped in the year 1968 to 69 because the young people has been sent to the countryside or state farm. So there is no 10 years Cultural Revolution. And according to the documents, and a lot of people believe that there is a 10 years disaster caused by the Cultural Revolution. But indeed, Cultural Revolution ended by economic crisis. That is not mentally you think or subjectively you believe or documentally you write, you wrote there. That is a period. You need to at least understand what is the regulation, what is the economic rule. So when we give such kind of explanation, we need to go back to finally the conclusion is here. We said linking and delinking. Linking what? You said linking the imperialist country or capitalist country. But no matter you set up what kind of linking, the key issue is that you put the capital in the center. You develop a model. It's a capital-centered model. And the government's policy is that the pro-capital policy. So pro-capital means the government became corporation, became the company. So the central governments, when they pro the capital, they play a role as a depoliticized. It's not easy to understand how that the country, the state, depoliticized. It's very clear. If the government set up the policy for pro-capital, it means the government is capital. The government is company. The government's not governments means the government depoliticized. So the state became a big state capitalism. That is the resources. That is sources of the state capitalism. Because the whole government set up the capital as a center. Because most of these are newly developed, newly independent country. The first challenge is that extremely shortage of the capital. If you want to set up modernization, you want to learn from your colonial master country, you must have the capital. And the capital you don't have, you need to take the capital from outside. So that is a capital investments from outside. And then you control by outside. That is a capital-centered developmentalism. Developmentalism means that you need to put capital into center, and the governments became a pro-capital governments, and then the capital make the price of the labor. So it means labor resources capitalized by central capital. So what is a centralization? What is a decentralization? When people believe that liberalism is decentralization, when the capital is central, means that you need to decentralize the capital position. Can you do it? No way. So when the labor became a kind of commercialized labor, the labor price marketized by capital means the capital capitalized labor resources and then to take the interest maintained by capital and then capital also can capitalize the natural resources. So the labor resources capitalized, and then the cost transferred to the society. And when the natural resources capitalized by the capital, and environment cost gave to the natural, to the earth. So that is why there is so many environmental cost, so many social costs nobody take. It's because capital has been capitalized, the natural resources and the labor resources. So that when we talk about the Chinese experiences, we need to know that before 1960s, when you're relinking with the foreign capital, you must set up the capital-centered system that the state followed foreign capital. You set up the state upper structure, the political upper structure, or a foreign style. Which foreign capital make which foreign institution? That is a so-called institution. So institution is a derivative from the capital style. So that's a model. And caused by this model, because your labor capitalized by the capital, labor only have a low salary for their survive. Means that labor have no surplus. No surplus means that you have no savings. No savings means that you have no financial system for investments. That is Latin American countries and African countries. The labor only have a little salary for family survival. For family survive means that you have no surplus. No surplus means no savings. No savings means no investments. No saving and no investment means that you have no banking system. Remember this once a time I have a dialogue with a Latin American scholar. He talked a lot about how to set up their bank. I said, where's your savings? In Africa also, do you have savings? If you have no savings, how can you set up the bank? Bank means that take savings, do investments, and then take the interest. That is bank. It's traditional bank, not modern bank. If you modernize your bank, you need to have a lot of speculations. That is another thing. But even the traditional bank, you don't have the ability to set up. And then talk a lot about the financial system, how to set up independence. It's a textbook. It's not reality. So the reality you should change first. To change all of these colonized areas, single economy system. If your economic resources controlled by transnational company, you cannot set up any financial system, even the budget system. So the first, change this one. That is a key issue, that's core. And then, that is local governments also became the corporatism. And then the industrial capital taken the resources for the center capital. And then the technical and the trainings and the education all became a part of the capital for capitalize the labor resources. So you have a no comprehensive education. The education, the function is a means trying to make the social resources into social capital, trying to make the labor resources into labor capital. So the labor is originally a human being, have a multi-characters, but the education used standardized textbook, only cut down all of your natural characters, make you to be a standardized labor force. That is a so-called education and training system. It's not for human being, it's for capital center. And then they are in name of market, but market always make large amount of the negative externalities. That is this model. And then this model have a big externalities. Out of this model can have a large revenues to financialization. And then financialization can make liquidity. And then this simulation and exclusions. That is from the capital center upgrade to the financialization. But they put all the cost to another circle. That is labor to be a social cost. And then the ecological cost and the resources cost and even the industry cost when you upgrade. So when we give this a two cycle together, we want to make people to understand, if you set up the linking system, if you rely on the foreign capital, there will be no way out. So when we talk about 1960s in China, the big change is that to put labor into the center. What is a new political economics? The new theory of when you want to make a kind of creative of traditional Marxism, the key theory is political economics. What is that? Our creative, by the analysis of the 1960s, the third crisis in China, we found that in 1960s, China changed the center. Originally, capital is here, but from 60s, labor is here. And then if you put labor as center, for the reform, you can make labor shareholders. That is a further reform. But when 1960s, they don't have that, but they have a labor-centered. And then labor-centered, they can make the whole country, the central, the state, politicized. That is re-emphasize the class struggle, drawing the worldwide revolution. So the state became very high politicized. And then you make the institution to have an institutional reform, to change for labor-centered, from capital-centered to labor-centered. That is big institutional reform. And then you can make the whole of the governance socialization. You can socialize the governance to make the three part as a group. Then to governance the factory, to governance the social area, to governance the rural society, whatever, all a three-part mixed group by laborers and technicians and managers. So it's a successful experiences even in the Second World War in Yan'an. That time it's a revolutionary area. They still use three-part mixed together as a group to do the governance in the village. So it's a historically speaking, it's a successful model for the governance socialization. And then you use this one, technician and education. Popularity means that you have a mass education. You have a mass technical trainings by people, because you have too many local experience, local techniques applied to local growth. But you forget, now when the labor-centered, you can change the whole of the education system and the training system. And then to make all the resources internalization. So you can have resources and environments, institutional cost to be internalized. Originally, it's a cost transferred to the environment, to the natural resources. But if you have a people, the labor-centered, you can change such kind of transformation. You have a positive externalities. And then you have a socialized and ecologicalized civilization. And by such kind of labor-centered, you also can have a local service socialization. That's very easy to understand, because in 1960s and 70s, even the early 80s, you don't need to worry about your kids. when they come back from the school or from kindergarten, nobody kidnapped them. And because that your neighbor will care about your kids. And you also don't need to worry about your old generation. The whole society will care about the young and the old. And you just go to work. And at that time, we have 3 decades. All of the public goods socialized. All of public service socialized. So that is the lowest cost. You don't need to set up a bureaucracy and then to many different sectors and then pay very high cost and then to set up many so-called law and regulation to limit the people's service. No, at that time, people's service. So I remember that when we talk about the system, the institution, and then the governance, and then the service, we are very easy to understand. But for these overseas peoples, they are not easy to understand. In the very beginning of 1980s, when China just opened to West society, and the American Center delegation come to China, they are organized by these social issue studies. I mean, it's a sociologist. Yeah, they come to China. And the law school professors and the economists, and then they organize a social science delegation come to China. They said, you have no law. I said, law is have too much high cost. No law, how can you manage your country? I said, okay, by people's self 自觉, how to say that is self-consciousness. And then we talk in a building. So outside the window, there's a Chang'anjie, it's a long street in front of the Tiananmen Square. Many bicycles, thousands of bicycles. Wow, in that time, in the beginning of the 1980s, they said if these bicycles crashed, and how can you deal with the problem? We said, okay, they just say 斗私批修, and then go back. Means that they repeat one word from Maoism, and means that you need to how to say that to reduce your selfish and criticize the revisionism, and then you go back to your own family. Nothing happened. We don't need to go to court. And then the American social scientist asked if some people hurt. We said, okay, we have a social care. Every unit, they just go back and then go to the medical service. And then, okay. Means that if you socialize your public service, you don't need to have so many high-cost institutions. So that is why this Western society cannot understand in 1970s, 1960s in China what happened. You have so many people that said, okay, maybe that is not good for the human rights, for democracy system, whatever, because they do have a kind of ideology, and then use such kind of standard to give you comments, and then whatever you have is just bad, just negative. So when we talk about labor-centered, we can understand all of the system. So that is why we need to give more explanation about the 1960s. Because about the 1960s historical studies in overseas societies, it's almost nothing. They just use their traditional Cold War ideology to describe 1960s, what happened in China. So nowadays, we need to, going forward, to have a more materials to collect for deepen our study. Okay, I will finish my brief of 1960s, the third economic crisis in China. Thank you.